The next section we want to look at, really just before we get started even talking about the fundamentals and overview of wireless, is just what are Cisco's wireless certifications and where can I go from here? So let's just talk about the path to becoming an expert in wireless. And you may say, well, wait a minute, I'm just looking at this from the CCNA wireless, or maybe you're looking at the same video from the CCNP wireless perspective. I'm not ready to talk about expert yet. Okay, that might be true, and I understand that, but we just want to look at the holistic picture of Cisco's wireless certifications and encourage you that you should continue to press on to becoming an expert. Really, when you're at the CCNA wireless stage, you're learning a lot of those very difficult fundamental topics that will stay with you for the rest of your journey in Cisco certifications. And as you go on to the CCNP certification for wireless and the 4 exams associated there, you're going to find that you really, once you've completed that level, you're really well on your way to becoming an expert. In fact, you know most of everything you need to know for foundational knowledge. Becoming and bridging the gap between professional and expert, while there's a big bridge there, it's mainly an application. So I just want to take that quick moment to encourage you to continue on to your, at least your professional, if you're not already there, working on that, but your CCIE in wireless as well. So taking a look at the Cisco Certified Network Associate for wireless, there's one written or computer-based exam. We call it written. It's currently, and it might have changed by the time you watch this particular video, the prices do sometimes go up, but it's currently $150 at the Pearson VUE type testing centers. It is the IUWNE, or Implementing Cisco Unified Wireless Networking Essentials version 2 exam. So 640-722. This is 90 minutes that you have to complete, and you have roughly between 60 and 70 questions. So you have on average of about 1.5 minutes per question. There is a prerequisite that you must first have a valid CCNA. So when we say this, we mean basically like and I hate to call it vanilla, so I typically say and I hate to call it plain CCNA, so I typically say the CCNA for route switch. Okay, but it is the first level. You have to have that. If you don't have a CCNA for route switch, but let's say you're coming into wireless as a new discipline, but you've actually been around the networking world for a while and you actually already have a CCIE in another track, that's fine. That also trumps the CCNA route switch and is a valid prerequisite. But all of this, I mean to say, you cannot simply take the CCNA wireless exam and expect to be certified as a CCNA wireless. You have to at least have another CCIE, or most probably just the CCNA, and then take CCNA for wireless. Okay, so just looking at the current CCNA route switch exam, its number is 640-802. It's 90 minutes and about 45 to 55 questions on average. What's the reason for this? Well, the wireless track doesn't teach you about how to route IP. We do go a little bit into switching, but really very, very brief. We talk about how to create VLANs and specifically how to turn a port into switch port mode trunk or switch port mode access, how to assign and do a tiny little bit of security with switch port allowed VLANs, and deal with a switch port, a switch virtual interface, an SVI, layer 3 interface on a layer 2/3 switch. But that's about it. We don't talk anything about routing. Even though we do span subnets, it's all on a single switch. Okay, so routing of IP and understanding the fundamentals of spanning tree, the fundamentals of OSPF and EIGRP are still very critically important. Moving on from your CCNA wireless, looking at the CCNP, or Cisco Certified Network Professional for wireless, there are 4 written or computer-based exams. Each of those are $150 at a Pearson VUE testing center. And here's what they are. They are the CUWSS, the IAUWS, the IAUWVN, and the IUWMS. So these are, going back to the top, the Conducting Cisco Unified Wireless Site Survey, V2. All of these are 60 to 70 questions with 90 minutes to complete. 60 to 70 meaning they could give you 60, they could give you 63 questions, 68, but no less than 60 and no more than 70. The wireless site survey is, and all of the let me go back. All of the NA exams start with 640 as the first three digits. All of the NP exams at this point in time start with 642. So all of these are 642 dash, and the wireless site survey is 732. The next one deals with wireless security, and that's 737. The next one deals with wireless networks. Wow. I had actually pulled these slides from my voice track that I also teach, and I had done a global search and replace for the word voice and replaced it with the word wireless. So this is actually, you do need to know about voice in wireless. You don't need to know about wireless for voice, but the converse is true. And this was actually supposed to be the Cisco implementing unified wireless voice networks, not wireless networks. Those are interesting networks. And that is the -742. All of these, by the way, are version 2 of the exam. So if I were to look at version 1, which is no longer able to be tested on, that was 642-731 and -736, 741, and 746. Okay, so these are now 732, 737, 742, and then wireless mobility services is 747. So at the NP level, you're looking at site survey, implementing these advanced wireless with security, a focus on security, a focus on voice, and then a focus on mobility. And of course, you have to first have a valid CCNA wireless, and before that, you have to have a valid CCNA. Finally, hopefully you're wanting to reach and attain the CCIE wireless, or the Cisco Certified Internetwork Expert in wireless. There are 2 exams needed to do this. The first is what's called the written, and that qualifies you to then go and take the practical. You cannot do these in reverse. Let me go back and say something. You could go take any one or even all 4 of these exams anytime you like. You won't be certified as a CCNP wireless until you actually go take your CCNA wireless and your CCNA route switch. But the point is that you can take any of these exams at any time. The same is not true once you get to the CCIE level. You cannot go take the practical exam until you have passed the written. So it's not like you can take the practical and then go tack on the written and then you're certified. You could do that with the lowers, I don't see why you would want to, but just stating you could, you are not able to at the expert level. The written is typically viewed as basically 10% of your certification, and the practical is the other 90%. So the written just is the authorization to get you in the door to be allowed to sit for your practical lab exam. The written, version 2, is test number 350, and all CCIE exams begin with 350. -050 or 050. It's 2 hours and somewhere between 90 to 100 questions. It's $350 at any Pearson VUE testing center. And after passing the written, you actually have 18 months to go take your practical lab exam. And then after your first attempt, because not everyone passes on their first attempt, then you have 12 months between lab attempts if your first or each is a failure, before you have to actually take the written to qualify to sit the lab again. You do have a maximum lifespan of 3 years for that written exam, meaning as long as you go take a lab exam every 12 months or within the first 18 at that first interval, it will still be valid, even if they change the version of the written in that time, to go take whatever version of the lab or practical is being tested. But once 3 years elapse, you'll actually have to go back and take that written exam to be qualified to go sit, even if you continue to take the lab exam during that time, to go take the new lab exam. So then the CCIE Wireless Lab, they just recently raised the price to $1,500 per attempt. Hopefully you only need 1, but most people need at least 2. Certainly not everyone. There's plenty of our students that pass on their first attempt. So don't mean to discourage you in any way. Many people can do it. It's just that not everyone can. I haven't passed a CCIE attempt or lab on my first attempt. I'll just go ahead and make that quite clear. We do have an instructor, Peter Lapukov, who's passed 4 CCIEs, all 4 of them on his first attempt. He's clearly smarter than I am. Make no bones about that. Anyway, Cisco facilities around the world. So you can get onto Cisco's website and go to cisco.com/go/training, or just go to cisco.com and click on the very top under training and events. And when you click on the Cisco Certified Internet Network Expert, it will give you the test locations. Now, not every track is tested everywhere around the world. There are a few, like route switch, service provider, and security, that are tested just about everywhere. But there are also a number of them that are only tested in certain locations. Wireless is one of those that's only tested in certain locations. So you need to actually take a look and see, is it tested in a location you want to go to, or do you have to make plans to travel somewhere? This is administered by Cisco, not by Pearson VUE, by CCIE proctors on their actual campuses. It's an 8-hour hands-on exam. So taking a look at recertification of your CCNA wireless, your CCNA wireless is valid for 3 years. To recertify, you must pass any one of these, any one of the CCNA concentration or specialized discipline exams. So that is, you could take the CCNA voice, and that would recertify your CCNA wireless. By the way, I had manually seen that word wireless, and replaced it, but I obviously missed the other. You could retake the CCNA wireless, of course, the CCNA security, or even service provider operations, but you can't just take, and I hate to call it vanilla, please don't take offense, but you can't just retake the CCNA route switch, because believe it or not, even though it seems from Cisco's website that it's on the same hierarchical level, it's actually a foundational exam is what they call it. So it has to be taken before and can't recertify another specialization. Now, why that is, I'm not exactly sure, because it's not like taking a CCNA security is in any way recertifying your knowledge of CCNA wireless. At any rate, that's the rules. You could also take any CCNP level exam of any of the disciplines, including route switch, and that will retroactively recertify your CCNA wireless, or any of the and all of the lower level certifications that you have from Cisco. So if you retake any one of the CCNP certification exams in any discipline, it recertifies all of your lower level certifications from Cisco. You can also take any current Cisco specialist exam. You also can take any CCIE or the CCDE, the Cisco Certified Design Expert, written or lab exam. Now, it has to be a passing grade of any of these. Just taking it isn't good enough. But if you pass any one of these, it automatically recertifies anything lower. So to recertify your NP, Network Professional Wireless, it's also valid for 3 years. Taking any current NP level exam, including route switch or anything else, recertifies any and all of your CCNPs and your CCNAs. And any CCIE written or CCDE written, or the practical exam, lab exam of each of those, will recertify, and actually specifically the CCIE written or CCDE written or lab of either of those will recertify not only all of your NP level exams, all of them at once, all of your NA, but it will also recertify any current specialist exams. So this is really nice. By the way, this is not something Cisco always had. You used to have to recertify each and every one of your certifications individually. And let me tell you, it was a lot of work and a lot of money. Of course, they didn't cost as much then, but still a lot of work to study for all the different things that you had to recertify. It sort of made more sense to them, and kind of to you maybe even now, because you were reproving that you actually knew in that given discipline what they were certifying that you knew, but it quickly became evident that people did not have that kind of bandwidth in their lives available. So looking at the CCIE wireless, this certification, any CCIE, is only valid for 2 years, not 3 like the others. To recertify, you have to pass a CCIE or CCDE written or practical lab exam. And passing any of these, as I mentioned, recertifies everything below. Now, finally, before we move on to the actual wireless course, a quick note about taking Cisco exams. Often, a question will seem like there may be more than one correct answer. Other times, there might seem like there's no good answer. Maybe you don't know the content very well if it seems like there's no good answer. But often there will seem like there's more than one good answer. The thing that I can say is do not try to interpret the question. Read it very carefully and do exactly or answer accordingly to exactly what the wording of the question says. Don't try to interpret it yourself what you think they mean. They mean what they mean. They mean exactly what they said. So read the words very carefully. Cisco doesn't try to trick you, but they do very carefully and very nuanced or use nuances in the wording of their exam to elicit a very specific response. So be very careful. Maybe a question states that choose the 3 correct answers, okay? And you only think there's 2. There is a third good answer. Or maybe you think that there are 4 good answers. Choose the 3 best answers. And that's all I can say is, I mean, couldn't possibly address every possible question that they could theoretically ask you. And nor if I even knew the questions, which I don't know every question in their pool. I know, the questions I got when I took my exam. But of course, we won't disseminate that information because we're not one of the, unfortunately, many, real test or actual exam or pass for sure, all that, stuff out there that's just complete garbage that in no way prepares you for a certification, but just tries to do a brain dump. But we're not going to break the NDA in any way. We're going to prepare you for the actual technology and help you understand the actual protocols and fundamentals involved, and you're going to actually be an expert, or at least an associate or a professional, and be able to answer the questions appropriately, okay? But if you think that there's 4 good answers and after the actual wording of the question, it says choose the best or choose the 3 correct answers, then clearly one of the 4 answers that you think are right are not as good or as quality or as correct as 3 of them are. So use the process of elimination and choose the 3 best answers, but just choose the best answers possible. Sometimes there will be a simulation question with boxes or lines that you have to rearrange. Maybe you have to draw lines between boxes, or you have to grab like flashcards that are on the left and drag them over to flashcards or boxes that are on the right to line up something like that. There also could be simulations, and there's also something called a testlet. So first of all, a simulation, basically this would just be where you would have kind of a network topology diagram. Maybe you have a wireless LAN controller and an access point, things that we'll go into here shortly. And it says, click on the wireless LAN controller and add an IP address or something like that. And so you click on it and it brings up a console. One of the things that I should point out is that you're not working on real hardware. And in fact, I hate to say this, but you're kind of working on a bad simulation in that there are very limited commands that you're actually able to execute on that simulated environment, that simulated iOS device, or in the case of a wireless LAN controller, simulated WLC. So that actually really, really plays to your benefit because there are a very few limited commands that you can even input. So use the limitations to your advantage to see, hey, I can only do certain things, and I'm not at the CCIE level. I'm at the NA or NP level. So, hit question mark a lot, not a lot, but a few times, and see what the few commands that you can enter are. And you're kind of almost pigeonholed into having to answer the exact right question. It's just a matter of how long does it take. So use the limited constraints of the simulator to your advantage to narrow down what they're asking for. Okay, then there's something called a testlet. A testlet is where they give you an overall topology, like a picture of the network, and they give you basically a paragraph stating a few sentences about, absolutes about that particular topology and about that particular network. And then they give you 4 separate questions about that overall network topology and paragraph statement. So this is kind of a testlet. It's almost like a tiny test within the overall test, but it counts as a single question. Now, how it's weighted, we'll never know exactly, but you're basically going to have to answer 4 separate test questions about that one overall topology. You might have 5 at the most, probably 3 or 4 would be the most mini questions within the overall single question. But don't necessarily think that that's just worth an even amount of points as the rest. Again, we don't know the weightings. Cisco does not make that public, and they don't in any way intend to. All that's part of the proprietary secret formula of their testing, but I can tell you this, don't be scared. It's very, very able to be passed. In fact, like I said, if you know the technology, if you've studied this particular class and watch it a couple times, don't just watch it once. Really understand. If you have a chance, if you have the opportunity, grab a few pieces of hardware. Grab a single AP and a single wireless LAN controller, the cheapest one you can find off eBay. Load 7.0 code on it and download a demo copy of the wireless control system. And you're good to go. You're ready to take the CCNA exam with those 3 basic components. You might need a switch too. So whatever it asks, just keep in mind there can be the correct answer, but there could be the Cisco correct answer, meaning there is a best answer according to their hardware and software. With the CCNA and really the entire route switch and even service provider and to a degree security discipline or tracks that Cisco offers, things are very standards based. Things you're going to find are very standards based with wireless and even with voice, not that that's what we're focusing on here, but the thing is that those 2 particular tracks are very Cisco product specific. So that's why I say there might be the correct answer, but there might be the Cisco correct answer. So it might be something that's more correct or more specific to a Cisco product. So be very cognitive of what Cisco products you're working around and either the limitations or specific configuration attributes about those products. So the correct answer should take into account the version that's being tested. For instance, wireless LAN controller 7.0, not 7.2. So as we talk about later in this class, and I've recorded this particular, I always do, the path to Cisco certifications in a given discipline, recorded this particular video later than the rest of the class has already been held, but we'll have a discussion later on about whether something is called HREAP, hybrid REAP, or whether it's called Office Extend, or whether it's called Flex Connect. So these are all just different Cisco marketing terminologies that as the product or as that particular technology went on in time, they began to change the name from HREAP to HREAP Office Extend, and then finally to something called Flex Connect. Well, Flex Connect is we'll see version 7.2. And I believe the test is still testing on version 7.0, which isn't any major thing to be concerned about. It's just that HREAP didn't, there was like a couple new features with Flex Connect, but all of the main technology, all of the main fundamentals are still the same. And so whether they call it HREAP, but you're used to it being called Flex Connect because you actually work with wireless networks every day and remote edge, remote office APs, just keep in mind basically what I'm saying of version 7.0. And so choose the best answer that you can find.